Today we will be learning about the southern sea otter. The phylogenetic tree of the southern sea otter. The phylum is Chordata, the order is Carnivora, the family is Mustelidae, and the species is Anhydrolutris. The general characteristics of the southern sea otter is that it is the smallest marine mammal in North America. It looks like a larger, fluffier version of river otters. They are the only fully aquatic species of otter, and they have insulated, waterproof fur to keep them warm in Pacific waters. Their fur is the densest fur in the world. It's up to 2 layers of insulation that consists of over 1 million hairs per square inch. Otters also groom for many hours throughout the day. In doing so, their fur gets coated with natural oils from their skin and also adds insulating bubbles that fluffs up their fur. They also have a high metabolic rate, which helps keep them warm as well.
More characteristics of the otters include their fur. The sea otters have the densest fur of any mammal. Otters have 2 types of fur, long, stout guard hairs, and a denser arrangement of short, fine underhairs. Most otters have guard hairs that average about 12 to 17 millimeters in length. All otters have very flexible bodies, and this flexibility allows them to groom almost every inch of their fur. Moving on to their head, their ears are very small and are either rounded or pointed. The valve-like structure of the ears enables them to close when in water. A sea otter's nose pad is larger, bare black, and diamond-shaped. Otters are equipped with vibrissae, or their whiskers. They're on its muscle, and with these whiskers, they're sensitive to touch and to underwater vibrations. Otters use these whiskers to detect the movements of prey. Their limbs. All otters have 4 relatively short legs that enable them to swim, walk, groom, and manipulate prey. The paws of the otters have bare sole pads on the underside, except for the sea otter, which has no sole pads on its hind feet.
After a sea otter is born, the mother begins to take care of it almost immediately. This continues until the pup reaches approximately 2 months of age. At 2 months, the sea otter will then begin diving. This is an important step in the development of the sea otter. Not only is it the first sign of independence for the sea otter, but diving is an important behavior for feeding. Once the sea otter reaches 6 to 8 months of age, it will become fully independent from its mother's care. The otter will then live a standard life until it is time to reproduce. Depending on the gender of the otter, the times of reproduction will vary. A female otter will be ready to reproduce once they are 4 to 5 years old. However, a male otter will not reproduce until they are anywhere from 5 to 8 years old. Sea otters can live up to 20 plus years in the wild, but most of the time they live anywhere from 10 to 15 years. Sea otters are a polygynous species, something that is quite common in mammals. Polygyny is the association of one male with multiple females. However, the females will only mate with a single male. One reason sea otters practice this behavior is the fact that female sea otters can only give birth once per year, or sometimes once every 2 years. In order to increase the number of offspring, having multiple female partners makes this possible. An interesting part of sea otter reproduction is the fact that they will breed year-round. Whereas some mammals have a certain breeding season, sea otters do not. Once an otter is born, the male otter will no longer offer support to the newborn or the mother. Instead, all of the parental care is provided by the mother. As previously mentioned, the mother cares for the pup until it reaches 6 to 8 months of age. At that point, the sea otter then will become a functioning adult.
Like many mammals, the sea otter's physical size differs between males and females. On average, the males grow up to about 70 pounds in weight, whereas the females grow up to 50 pounds in weight, while both grow to about 4 feet in length. The sea otters have a dark coat and various shades of brown. They have dense hair and fur which insulates them from water and air, and their front paws have retractable claws which help them groom, capture prey, and gather materials. Under their arms, they have pouches made of skin. Their whiskers allow them to sense vibrations in the water, which is helpful in low visibility conditions. And their tail and hind legs are wide and flattened, which allows them to propel themselves through the water. You can see here an image of two otter pups. Their hind feet are really wide and they have the tail, whereas their front paws and arms are pretty small in comparison, but that allows them to have better motor skills and to crack open food and to also store food and tools in the pouches under their skin. As far as feeding strategies, otters use rocks to break open hard shells of marine invertebrates, such as bivalves, crabs, octopus, sea stars, and tunicates. And as they're diving down to the ocean floor, they'll use these skin pouches to store rocks and food while they swim back up. Their habitat is primarily going to be any coastal waters that are up to 50 meters in depth. And today they're found in central and southern California.
We would see even more negative impacts to kelp abundance throughout the nearshore as we continue to have warming waters. I think it would drastically change how we see our nearshore coastline. With an arch, the center stone is called a keystone, and it's the one piece that really holds that arch together. So in ecology, a keystone species is an organism that really helps maintain an ecosystem to exist in the form we would expect it to. And if we lose that species, that ecosystem will change dramatically or even cease to exist. Kelp forests are extremely important, really, in so many different aspects of the world. They provide nursery habitat for other fish and invertebrates, which leads to food sources. So other marine mammals and seabirds also will use the kelp forest when they're in that healthy cycle. They absorb carbon. So in terms of climate change, they play a really important role with that. And when they're healthy and abundant along our shoreline, they'll protect the coast when we have large storms. In areas where sea otters were present, they were consuming lots of urchins. This helped control that population and allowed the kelp forest to be healthy and flourish. In areas where the sea otters were not present, their urchins were able to kind of expand their population unchecked, graze on the kelp as their food source, and to the point where we no longer saw kelp forests. It was what is often referred to as an urchin barren. Kelp forests also provide a barrier of protection from those white sharks. So areas that have healthy kelp forests, we have lower white shark related mortalities. And that also protects, by having that kelp forest absorbing that carbon, that can help mitigate some of the impacts we're seeing of climate change. So by sea otters helping maintain that kelp forest, they're helping themselves in terms of, those larger impacts as well. We as humans need to do a lot of work to help protect our environment. And one of the ways to do that is to restoring the ecosystem so that they can continue to do their work and help us do that as well.
Distribution. The current range is in southern and central California. Colonies are in San Mateo, Santa Cruz, Monterey, San Luis Obispo, and Santa Barbara counties, and at San Nicolas Island and Ventura counties, where they can be seen 1.2 miles away from the shore. The southern sea otters were once all the way down to Mexico before they were greatly hunted. Conservation. Other than natural predators, sharks, bald eagles, orca whales, and stellar sea lions, humans began hunting them for their fur. Because sea otters have the most dense fur of any animal on Earth, so that makes it desirable for humans to hunt them for their fur. Overhunting for their fur began in 1700, and by the early 1900s, the population has been reduced to a single colony along the Big Sur coast. Extinction was coming for the southern sea otters. In 1977, southern sea otters were listed as threatened under the Federal Endangered Species Act. Southern sea otters are fully protected by California under state law. Within the California law made in 1977, population has expanded to its current range. With originally a population size of 14,000, it is now on average 2,000 yearly. A recovery plan for the species was made in 2005 by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and are currently on watch for their recovery to make the population to at least 3,000 to be removed from the threatened species list.
Some of the topics of interest about sea otters. Sea otters are a keystone species due to their predation on sea urchins. Without sea otters, the ecosystem as a whole would collapse. This is because the sea otters feed on the sea urchins, and without them, the sea urchins would just grow exponentially, and they would eat most of the kelp, and that would just annihilate the whole ecosystem. Another interesting fact about otters is that while they eat alone and they tend to be a little bit more solitary, they usually sleep in groups, and the groups of sea otters sleeping are called rafts. And while they're asleep, they usually hold hands to keep them from drifting apart. Another fun fact is that the breeding and birth of sea otters occurs in the water.